Hello, my friends. I hope you're doing well today, and welcome back to another episode of our ProRevenge, where you guys come to hear stories of people getting what they deserve. There are going to be 3 stories in this one. The first story is a sweet revenge on a choosing beggar couple, and the second is about a guy who tries to extort 2 ex-cops. My goodness, I hope you stay for the stories today, and do hit that subscribe button for future videos. This first story is titled, "I Want the One in the Picture, Darn It." This happened about 5 years ago when I was selling cars. On a Saturday, just before lunch, I sold a car to my first customer of the day. Any car guy will tell you that if you can get one out by 11 in the morning on a Saturday, you should almost be mad if you don't get a hat trick, which is a $150 bonus. I'd already gotten some free money in the morning meeting for a couple of perfect surveys, and my sale was the first of the day for the store, which happened to be a spiff that day. So, I'm riding high, having already put $500 in my pocket before noon with a real shot at doubling it before they turned out the lights. It's going to be a good day, I thought. I just finished stocking my fresh trade and collecting my first sales spiff when the receptionist comes to my desk and says, "Hey, Opie, you're really good with weird, angry, and weirdly angry customers." I replied, "Yeah, I guess that's me. What have we got?" "That couple over there that looks like it's taking too long for the guy at Jimmy John's to make their sandwiches is looking for a new car," she says. I sighed, put on my sunny customer service face, and greeted the couple. They're older, but not old, in their mid-50s. They're aloof and condescending as I bring them to an empty desk, as my desk was on the used side, and offer coffee. They scoff and decline until they see the big fancy cappuccino machine. The wife looks at me expectantly as I sit down, inviting her to help herself, reassuring her that it's a very intuitive machine with several options, but I'll be happy to help if she has any problems. Hubby, choosing beggar number 1 for dialogue, hands me a folder. Inside is a printout from the website, and he says, "I'd like to purchase this truck, please, at the advertised price." I say, "Excellent. Before we discuss rebates, let me double-check that we still have the vehicle in stock. It'll only take a minute." He interrupts me and says, "You don't know your own inventory? This is very unprofessional." "Hey, honey," he says, "he probably doesn't even have it in stock. Looks like we might have come all the way down here for nothing. I told you, we should have gone across town to the other one." I can tell this is going to be fun. I mindlessly apologize and explain that we have 18 salespeople and over 650 cars on the lot at any given time, and we've sold many cars today, so I need to make sure it's not sold. He scoffs and tells me to hurry up with it. With luck, I check the key track and see that the keys are checked in. I politely excuse myself to pull the truck around. In retrospect, I wish I'd paid more attention to the listing, as it would have saved some pain, but I just pulled the stock number, verified availability, and pulled it around. "All right, let's take a look," I say. They follow me outside and I start my walk around. The husband says, "This is the wrong truck." I ask, "Well, what do you mean?" "This is the truck from the listing you gave me." "Good grief, no, it's not," he says. "The listing I gave you was for a white long bed King Ranch. This is a silver XLT. I get that reading is hard, but you'd think even a domestic car salesman would know his colors." I reply, "First of all, there is no such thing as a $30,000 King Ranch, and you clearly know that. Second, I don't appreciate being insulted. Clearly there's been a mistake. Let's go back inside and figure it out." The husband then tells me, "You have to honor your advertised price. It's the law." My wife is a lawyer. His wife chimes in and says, "I'm a lawyer, and I'll eat you alive. You have to honor what you advertise." I tell them, "Look, there is no need to get hostile. I don't get paid unless you buy, so it's in my interest to work this out. I assume our web developer made a mistake with the pictures, but let me investigate, and we'll go from there." As I suspected, every word of text on the listing pointed to an XLT, as did the window sticker link. The web guy mixed up the pictures. I found the pictured truck, which had a sticker price more than $20,000 higher with fewer rebates. I printed both stickers and the fine print disclaimer at the bottom of every listing and spent 20 minutes explaining, trying to talk sense, and fielding a myriad of threats and insults. Things have gotten nasty, and I was ready to fire them, but when I went to grab the stickers, the last thing I heard from the desk was, "Don't you dare cut them loose! Sell them a truck!" I take it straight to the general manager at this point, who comes out, takes one look at these people, and decides it's not worth it. He personally delivers a pencil showing a real money $6,000 loss with the invoice backing it up. We're still about $17,000 apart, and they're holding ground, still threatening litigation despite knowing they have no leg to stand on. They basically knew they were practically stealing the truck they wanted at the advertised price due to the advertising mistake. Our store is part of the third largest group in the world at the time, so we had lawyers too. We happened to have the exact truck they were trying to buy on the used side. 1 model year older, 21,000 miles, certified pre-owned, listed at $36,999. I flipped them to that one, and we moved to the used side. The husband says, "Used? Do we look poor to you?" I reply, "Sir, I can assure you this used one is in great condition, and you can save a lot of money on the truck." I show them the truck, and hubby is failing miserably at hiding his excitement by the end of the test drive. My general manager had told me to call him before I presented a pencil, so I did. To my chagrin, he cut the price down and had me present at $32,999 to see if they'd bite. They're still fixated on $30,000. Here we pick up the conversation. The husband says, "I don't care what the price you're selling it at is. I want to know what you paid for it, and then we'll negotiate an offset from there." I tell them, "No, that's not something you get to know. You don't demand to know cost on anything else you buy. Even if you weren't stealing this truck, and you absolutely are, my time isn't free." His wife chimes in and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot that people come to a dealership to make it all about you. I forgot it's all about you crooks and how you want to maximize profit. We want a great price, and we're not there yet, so do better." I tell her, "You absolutely are at a great price, and given the abuse that I've endured, you're out of your mind if you think I'm going to budge a cent off this price. I have a baby at home, and I need this commission." I know this next comment is going to sound embellished, but I swear to goodness it's verbatim. The husband says, "I couldn't care less if your baby lives or dies. Take $1,000 off for me." Holding back my rage, I say, "We're done here." "What?" he says. "You heard me. We're done. Take your stuff and go." "No, I'm buying a truck," he says. I tell him, "No, you're not. I've been patient, and you've crossed the line by being so disrespectful toward me and my child, so get out right now." His wife then says, "Oh, typical." They stood up, and I herded, half-shoved, them out of my regular office and out of the building. I immediately got lit up by the desk managers, and I let them speak their piece. I told them what was said, and suddenly we were a united front. I was shaking, I was so angry, so I was given a shot of desk whiskey and told to remain in the tower until the whiskey worked, and I calmed down. I was still there when the husband called about 20 minutes later to complain about how he was treated. He caught an earful from my manager. He still wanted the truck, and my manager still wanted to sell it, so he put the guy on hold and asked me, "Hey, Opie, I've got to sell this truck. What do you want me to do?" "I'll do the paperwork if you want, but you're still going to have to deliver." I told him, "Sure, just tell him his price expired when he got himself tossed, and there's no negotiation when he comes back. If he wants the truck, he'll pay what we ask. Don't tell him the price, and mark it up $2,500. He laughed, nodded, and set it up. The husband comes back, and I got the deal jacket ready, brushed off his fake apology, and made him fill out the credit app in silence before I showed him the buyer's order. He said, "This is way higher than it was before." I replied, "Yes, sir, it is. Sign here." "But why?" he asked. "Sign or go home," I said. He glared at me. I stared into his eyes and didn't say a word for a good 30 seconds. Then he picked up the pen and signed. I remained cold but professional through delivery. He remained crude and disrespectful every time I spoke with him, but he ended up being my biggest source of referrals. Evidently, he told everybody he knew about me charging him an inflated price on this amazing deal of a truck, and that made his circle want to buy from me. Over the next year, I sold 7 cars to people he knew. If anyone's interested, I did make my hat trick that day, but it didn't come until shortly after closing. This story reminds me of my first job at a car dealership right out of high school. I used to work at Honda, and I have so much respect for car salesmen and people who work in retail who deal with crummy people on a regular basis. I'll never forget this one foolish old man who basically told me to my face that I needed him. He was like, "Listen, kid, I know you're young, you have no money, and you need my money. Do you know how you're going to get this money? By selling me this car." He was a total jerk about it, so condescending and arrogant, trying to get a $15,000 Honda Civic down to $9,000. What commission am I going to get if you try to get a $15,000 Honda Civic down to $9,000? Like, am I going to get $10 or what? There's going to be no commission out of that, sir. He went to another Honda dealership because Apparently, we had horrible salespeople that wouldn't give him a $6,000 discount. This next story is titled, If You're Going to Try Your Hand at Extortion, Be Smarter Than the Ex-Cops You're Trying It On. To start, my family owns a construction company. We develop tracks and build nice homes for low-income families. Anyone in construction knows there are some great people who work in construction and some who are pretty shifty. One day, my father was in his office when one of the secretaries came in and told him that there was a really strange call for him. He answers and is immediately told by the voice on the other end of the line that if he doesn't pay $50,000, the voice would tell the authorities there were dead bodies hidden in the track trenches. A couple of things: my dad is ex-law enforcement and so is his brother, our site foreman. Both are even-tempered but shrewd men. My father, who smells the nonsense right away, calmly says, "You'll have to call back," and hangs up the phone. He then pulls out a tape recorder from his desk and calls both the secretary and the accountant in with pens and notepads. The phone rings again, and my dad puts it on speaker as the guy threatens my father to never hang up on him again. My father hits record and mimes writing so the staff will transcribe everything the guy says. Over the course of the conversation, the voice lays everything out: the amount, the drop-off point, and the proof that the bodies weren't there. My father tells him to call back in an hour, as the money will take some time to get. The voice agrees and hangs up. Then my father calls the police. He plays the tape for them, shows them the matching transcripts, and tells the cops the time and place for the pickup. The cops apparently have better things to do, so they blow it off as a prank. This doesn't sit well with my father, so he calls my uncle, and the two of them get to work. After the hour is up, the call comes in. My father has a pretty good idea of who it is that's making the calls. It's the backhoe operator that we had a pretty good working relationship with. So my father just addresses him by name. We'll call him Donnie. He tells Donnie there's been a snag and that they need to meet in 10 minutes in the parking lot near his office, someplace public. Donnie agrees. My father and uncle, both with concealed carry permits, grab their pistols and head out. I got to hear what happened next because my father brought the tape recorder to ensure they could clear their names when the guy who picked up the money inevitably said they were innocent. This tape was hilarious. The voice on it says, "Are you Jack?" Dad replies, "Yeah, how do you know, Donnie?" A friend of a friend of a friend. So, you're basically an accomplice in a felony, right?" The voice demands the package, and my dad says, "Move in." At this point, my uncle draws his gun. We hear the voice screaming and the car turns on. My uncle says, "Get him." There's a sound of a scuffle, followed by swearing and the honking of the horn as my father bounces the guy's head 3 times off the steering wheel. My father and uncle bring this bloody guy into the police station in cuffs. The cops are gobsmacked, but listen to the recording and decide to do their job. My father points out that Donnie is still out there, but again, the cops have an easy slam dunk on the guy, so they don't want to go out again. Fine, but once again, this didn't sit well with my father. So, the next day, he and my uncle go for a little drive. It turns out that Donnie lived 45 minutes away from the drop-off site. And my father was 100% sure that Donnie wouldn't trust his partner in crime with $50,000, so they figured he was nearby. Sure enough, after driving by the parking lots of hotels in a 5-mile radius, they find Donnie's truck. They go in, find out what room he's in, and then call the cops to update them, asking if they're going to come out and get him, or if they should bring him in like they did yesterday. This time, the police decide to come out. After everything was said and done, Donnie admitted to everything, and he ended up spending some time in prison. My father and uncle still relish the story, and to this day, they chuckle when they remember bouncing that guy's head off the steering wheel. Donnie's definitely an idiot. Seriously, who asks for $50,000 in cash and actually has somebody pick up the money in broad daylight? Guys, I've watched a lot of movies, and I'm pretty sure 100% of the time in movies, when you come to pick up large amounts of money, you're going to get screwed over. You always get screwed over. I'd love to hear the recording that Opie said they got. The next story is from a subscriber who sent an exclusive story. This story is titled, "I tricked my deadbeat uncle into debt for stealing my money in a fiery revenge." My mom has this brother, or uncle, whom we don't refer to as our uncle because he's caused trouble for our family for years. Once in a while, he shows up and stays with us rent-free for as long as he can before suddenly taking off and disappearing. Let me give you a bit of backstory on this guy so you'll understand. For as long as I can remember, he's been a giant piece of garbage. We live in Canada, and he's a chronic job hopper. He would work a job for 8 months, long enough to qualify for Canadian employment insurance. Then he would purposely get laid off and sit on his butt for a year, collecting. Government assistance checks while traveling to third world countries like India, Vietnam, or Thailand, basically any country where the $800 biweekly payments would go a long way. My father hated him. My father's a hardworking man and hated the fact that my uncle would continuously collect government checks that, basically, the working community had to pay for through their own taxes. At a very young age, my dad taught me to basically despise him. He only had the title of uncle by being my mom's brother. Other than that, he was low-life scum. Every so often, when he returned from his trips to those countries, he'd obviously be broke, so my mom would let him stay with us. Then he would find jobs to try to get back on his feet so he could do the same thing again. For as long as I can remember, this was his lifestyle. He would work, purposely do something to get laid off to qualify for insurance benefits, collect those sweet government checks for 9 or 10 months while living it up and partying in third world countries, then come home, find a job, and repeat the cycle. I wish I was lying when I say he's scum. He is scum. Another reason we don't like him is that he was a drug user. He would go to those countries, get hopped up on drugs, blow his money on partying, sex, and casinos, to the point where he had no money and would call my mom to help him. Numerous times our family had to pay for plane tickets for him to return to Canada on the promise of returning the money. Now, if you know someone like this, you'd know the money a lot of times would never get returned. He never once returned any money for plane tickets to my mom. Now, if you're listening to Fluffy read this story and are thinking, why the heck did your mother continue to take him in when your dad hated him so much? Well, here's the funny thing. My parents would always argue over why my mom would let him into our house, but honestly, it's her brother, and I guess she cares for that deadbeat. So there's the reason he always stayed with us, and she took him in. We also had an extra room in the basement where he would sleep. Alright, now let's get this story rolling some more now that you've got a good grasp on who my uncle is. I can get to the real juice. So, one time when I was 19 years old, I was working a full-time job in a steel mill, trying to save up money to go to law school to become a lawyer. I was making $24 an hour as a laborer, so it was pretty good money. Since I was still living at home, I was helping out with utilities and some rent because my dad taught me responsibility. Our uncle was living with us at that time as well. One day my mom approached me asking to borrow some money. Our family isn't well off and was always kind of tight on money, so I did what I could to help out when they needed me to. She asked me for $1,000 for a car repair, since our car needed a new timing belt and water pump installed. She just said she needed it and would appreciate it if I could lend it to her, and when she got paid next, she'd return the money. My mom had borrowed money from me before, and she's a good mom and has always returned whatever she borrowed, so I knew she needed it, and I just gave it to her, no questions asked. But that's not the point of the story. Somehow, my uncle snuck into my mom's room, where she had the money in an envelope, and stole the money that I gave to my mother. I don't know how or when he did it, but I do remember my mom coming to me crying, saying that when she was out, my uncle went into her room, crept around, and took the money, and it was gone. My dad was furious. They got into a huge argument where my uncle said that he'd already spent the money, blah blah blah, and that he needed the money as a deposit for an apartment he was moving into, and that they would get it back when he got on his feet. In reality, that meant never. So, my brother and I decided to get some pro-revenge on him. My brother and I were completely livid at him for going into my parents' room and taking the money that I lent for car repairs, and I had to shell out another $1,000 to get the car fixed, so I was down $2,000. We hatched a plan to get the money back. We waited a few months when we knew he had a steady job going and pay coming in. We asked him about paying back my mother the money he stole, and he kept putting it off, saying that she'd get it one day. That's when our plan kicked into high gear. If he wasn't returning it, we were going to take it back from him. Our plan was simple, to get his PIN number from his bank card and take back what's owed, and then report him to the Canadian Revenue Agency for what he's been doing. My brother and I made a plan to party with my uncle and take him on a night out in town. We planned to get him super wasted on alcohol because he can't resist a good party and beautiful women. I asked my friends Megan and Michelle, two very good-looking girls, to come in on the plan. They would meet us at the nightclub we were going to and begin hitting on him, pretending they were interested in him, and just get him drunk. The plan was to have my uncle get interested in those two girls, have him buy them drinks, and then go to an ATM to withdraw some more money when he's drunk. About 3 hours into the night, with two women on his arm and him being drunk out of his mind, he ran out of money from buying shots. I told my friend Michelle to suggest they go back to her place to have some fun and get cozy, but not before my uncle treated them to another round of drinks. My uncle, being the party animal he was, couldn't resist. That's when my brother and I came in. Since my uncle at that point was nearly blackout drunk, we grabbed his arms and helped him walk to the ATM to get money. He put his card in, and since he was really drunk, he made no effort to cover up his PIN number. My brother distracted him by telling him that the girls really wanted him in bed and the night was wild, while I took a look at him putting in his PIN number for his card. I remember the numbers to this day. I saw him punch in 5438. Bingo, we got him, Jack. After we got the PIN number, I told the girls to let him off easy and tell him that they had to go, but not before having a few more drinks. We drove my uncle home, where he passed out. Now, you're probably thinking that we emptied his bank account that night, right? No, that would be too obvious. He'd know for sure that we had something to do with it. We waited 2 more months. We played the long game. He was planning on doing something at work to get laid off again because it was just about time for him to go on his annual trip and collect his free money. He came over one weekend because he needed a place to stay as he had just gotten out of his apartment lease. My brother and I knew exactly what to do. We waited until he got high out of his mind like he usually does and fell into a deep sleep. We grabbed his wallet and took his bank card. My brother stayed behind to keep watch in case he woke up to distract him, while I drove down the road to a little convenience store, went inside, and took back what was mine. Wouldn't you know it? His daily withdrawal amount was $1,000. Perfect. I took back what he took from me, and I also put him into debt. I guess he had an overdraft in his bank, and I checked the account balance, and it was minus $846. The funny thing is, he didn't figure it out until a month later when he went to take out some money and noticed that he was $1,000 short and in the negatives. Long story short, he called the bank, reported fraud, and met with someone at the bank to discuss what happened. It turns out they didn't do anything about it or replace the money that I took from his bank account since it was withdrawn using the correct PIN code. My uncle was furious. I heard him complaining to my mom that the banks were sleazy, that he was fraudulently attacked, and that he was opening an account with another bank because the bank he was with didn't care about customers, blah blah blah. I just walked into the kitchen where they were talking and said, "Don't worry, I'm sure you'll get your money back one day. Karma always gets people." He agreed with me and said, "I hope the people that steal from me rot." I wish I had left it at that and that the story ended there, but unfortunately, I'm the bad guy in this whole situation. The really funny thing about this story is that a month later, before he left to go on his trip, he returned the $1,000 that he stole or borrowed from my mom. It was a shocker to my dad, myself, and my brother. We kind of jumped the gun, and I ended up stealing from him, but hey, now I have an extra $1,000 that I will someday lend back to him when he needs it. Oh my gosh, someone should create a subreddit called Revenge Gone Wrong, because this is a prime example of pro-revenge going great and then OP turning out to be the bad guy. I found it hilarious how OP and his brother went through all that trouble, planned for months and months, took their uncle to the bar, stole his PIN code, all to get their $1,000 back, which, in the end, the uncle gave back to their mom, and OP put him like $800 in debt. And continue with this is my view on these story. Story 1, I want the one in the picture, darn it opinion. This story had me laughing and cringing at the same time. Dealing with entitled customers like that couple must be soul-draining, and I feel for you as a salesman trying to keep your cool. Their condescending attitude, calling you out on reading colors and throwing around empty legal threats, was infuriating, and the husband's comment about not caring if your baby lives or dies? That's beyond the pale. I admire your restraint in not decking them right there. The way you turned it around by marking up the price after they came crawling back was a sweet bit of justice. They thought they could bully you into a steal, but you flipped the script and made them pay for their arrogance. It's hilarious that the husband's bragging about the deal brought you more sales. Talk about karma working in your favor. This story is a testament to the patience retail workers need and the satisfaction of outsmarting rude customers without losing your professionalism. You earned that hat trick and then some. Story 2. If you're going to try your hand at extortion, be smarter than the ex-cops you're trying it on opinion. This one's a wild ride. Your dad and uncle sound like absolute legends. Calm, calculated, and not afraid to take matters into their own hands when the cops drag their feet. The audacity of Donnie thinking he could extort a construction company run by ex-cops is almost comical. He picked the worst possible targets. I love how your dad played it cool, recording the calls and setting up the trap with such precision. The image of them bouncing the accomplice's head off the steering wheel had me chuckling. It's like something out of a gritty action movie. Tracking down Donnie at the hotel and dragging him to justice was the cherry on top. This story shows that you don't mess with people who know the system better than you do. It's a satisfying tale of outsmarting a would-be criminal, and a reminder that shady schemes rarely go unpunished when you're dealing with sharp operators like your family. Story 3. I tricked my deadbeat uncle into debt for stealing my money in a fiery revenge. Opinion. Oh man, this story is a roller coaster of revenge gone right. Until it went wrong. Your uncle sounds like an absolute leech, mooching off your family and gaming the system with his job-hopping scam. Stealing the $1,000 you lent your mom for car repairs was a low blow, and I can feel the betrayal that fueled your plan. The scheme with your brother and the girls to get him drunk and snag his pin was straight-up devious, brilliantly executed, I'll give you that. Taking back the $1,000 and accidentally putting him in debt by $846 was a poetic twist, especially since he didn't suspect you. But the bombshell that he paid your mom back after you pulled this off? That's where it gets messy. You ended up profiting an extra $1,000, which makes you the bad guy in hindsight. It's a hilarious case of revenge gone wrong, and I think you went a tad too far by not coming clean once he repaid your mom. Still, the story is a wild mix of clever planning and unintended consequences, and it's a great cautionary tale about letting anger drive the bus. Maybe consider returning that extra grand to clear your conscience. It'd make for an even better twist. With that said, your uncle pulling that little scheme of working just enough to qualify for employment benefits is pretty shady, and I'm sure he could get into a lot of trouble and maybe even face jail time. Who knows? What do you think of OP's story? Was it worthy of being pro-revenge? Did he do the right thing by taking back $2,000 and leaving his uncle $800 in debt, or do you think he went too far and should come clean? That's it for today's episode of our /pro-revenge. If you guys are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future stories, and I'll see you guys in the next one.